Okay, everybody, you've had 2 minutes and we have some questions that have come in. So whilst we're answering those, people can still add other questions if they have them. And what I'm going to do is pick the questions and then address it to this Mary's team first and then to the law task group afterwards, and you can decide amongst yourselves who's going to answer each bit of each question. The first question comes from Ruth van Dijk, which was, were there differences in access or quality of assistance, legal assistance between child and adult victims of trafficking?
Maybe I can start answering this question. So we haven't looked particularly at the differences, but based on the literature review, I can say, for instance, in terms of the German context, there's no child-oriented procedure in place to identify child victims, and therefore, yes.
Yeah. Can you talk up a bit higher, because it's a bit difficult to hear, sorry.
Yeah. So I said in the German context, and based on the literature review, so we could find that there's no child-oriented assistance really in place at the national level. And in fact, we have also found that the German government doesn't really recognize child trafficking explicitly as a type of trafficking. So this also means that there's no special identification and signposting to any assistance for children. So this is my,
Do you think that that's something that should be addressed at kind of European level in terms of making definitions on child trafficking, as opposed to each country having different definitions?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's always good to have sort of a shared understanding. And also learn from other countries how they provide.
Thank you. Is there anybody from the Law Task Group want to say anything on that? Because I know that Renata did some research on child trafficking.
Yes, I would like to say something about this issue in Bulgarian context. Actually, it's a very important aspect of the protection of victims because, as you know, children are by presumption victims with specific needs, which means that there is a necessity to have some additional skills when you work with victims in order to avoid any secondary, for example, victimization. And in Bulgarian context, this is one of the huge problems because we have some procedural guarantees for victims with specific needs within the Criminal Procedure Code. But there is one very important issue that the court differentiates between children of age under 14 and children of age above 14. And according to the penal code, the children of age above 14 are kind of equal to adults. According to this code, which is a problem because nor the Convention on the Rights of the Child, neither the European Union directives differentiating the age of children. All these instruments say children are people on age under 18, and there is no difference 14, 15, 16, etc. And another very important aspect here, I would like to point out, which is an issue for Bulgaria, but it might be issue also for other countries, is identification of the age of the victims, of the age of survivors. Actually, in Bulgaria, it's a huge issue when it is connected with migrant children. And in many cases, our authorities are not, doesn't have enough skills to provide the necessary protection for the children, but also they don't have the necessary skills to identify the migrant children, which might be trafficked. So it's very, very good question about the children, and thank you for Rolf for asking this question.
And I think Begoña has something to add on that. Begoña, can I hand over?
I think in Spain it's a bit the same thing. It depends, and it depends if it's for sexual abuse, then minors are even in worse situation, except when they are from 15 till 18, if they are recognized as minors, because as Liliana said, that's a big problem. But when it's in the case of they are forced to commit crimes or for begging, that's another answer. But I will ask maybe Cristina Manzanedo that she can answer the question. maybe she has more experience in Spain. I have more experience in France than in Spain about that.
Christina, did you want to say something on that?
Yeah.
No.
But I think that would merit another, maybe that's also a future line of research, because usually minors are with an adult, women.
Yeah.
And what happened with, and usually it is the women that is foreseen as a victim, but maybe the child approach is missing in the context of trafficking. I would suggest maybe to include it as a future line of research.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody from the St Mary's want to come back on that, or shall we move on to another question? Carol, yes.
Yeah, just to say that it becomes problematic when the child is defined differently in different countries, in terms of age and how people fit into that. So, I mean, that's not to say that it's impossible to do, but I do agree with, I'm sorry, I don't know your first name, is it Cristina Manzanedo? Cristina, in terms of it certainly is a focus for a future piece of research.
Okay, thank you very much. I have another question from Mark Wiggin, which was two parts really. What did the panel consider the single most important reform of local legal support, or the most important action that could come out as a result of this report? So I'm going to go to the Law Task Group first, and then we'll come back to St Mary's. Okay, the Law Task Group, have you got any thoughts on what you consider the most important action that could come out of this report for Renata, as Renata commissioned it?
If I may speak, Mary.
Annie, yes.
Hello. So I cover the UK, and in this instance, for the report, it was England and Wales. And one of the big things that was mentioned by Mary Agnes was there's 136,000 suspected victims of trafficking in the UK, but only 10 to 11,000 are actually identified. And I think getting people to talk more about identification of those trafficking victims, so we can then get some legal help to them, would be an extremely important action to come out of this research. A second one, of course, is about accessibility. That generally victims of trafficking are very reluctant to engage with authorities. They see lawyers and legal people as a step very removed from them. So trying to bridge that gap to make accessibility to legal assistance, be it through formal legal aid or not, would be an extremely important action out of this as well.
Thank you. Begona, you wanted to say something as well.
Yes, I think that for me, one of the important follow-up is what Cristina has presented. Who identifies the victim? Because I think that's one of the things that to allow that NGOs, to work towards NGOs can be allowed, who have been following the person, can be allowed to identify the person, the victim. I think that that's something very important, because if it's like in the case of Spain, only the police that can recognize, identify them, it's very difficult for them. And there is a minority that is identified only.
Okay. And anybody from St Mary's wish to comment on that?
Maybe I can just come in, and I wanted to actually echo what Stefan from IGM Romania mentioned. So in terms of action, it'll be crucial to evaluate all the practices that we have at the moment. I think we are all doing brilliantly on paper and in terms of legal frameworks, and we are all equipped. But in terms of implementation of some of these frameworks, we have still a lot more work to do in order to make legal aid more accessible, more understood, and obviously have a better quality of the support that we give.
Thank you. I had a question because on the chat we haven't got any more, and we haven't got a lot of time, but are you planning to extend this research into other countries or other kind of areas? Because you mentioned the need for further research, and it seems to me that this report will be incredibly valuable to the people in the countries which were based on the report, but there may be other people at this meeting from other countries who would be very interested for further research and could communicate directly with St Mary's, with the Bakita Centre. So over to you, Anta.
I mean, we are always open to work with practitioners, as I said, and we value partnership working. Obviously, this is always subject to funding, unfortunately, but we are hoping that we stay in close contact with Renata, and maybe we have further conversations for extending this research and going further or deeper, for example. But yeah, we hope it's the short answer, but maybe Carol also wants to come in.
Yes, Carol, do you want a word?
Yeah, yes, I've just noticed a comment in the chat as well, actually. Veronica Lupu from Moldova is saying that other countries could do with some kind of exploration. And I think, you know, going forward, it would be really useful for us to look together at sources of funding to carry this research forward, because it was a scoping review. It was very time constrained. And I think considering that, the product it has been really exemplary because of the research and the contacts that you have, and to be able to build on that would be fantastic, I think, and would be a really key piece of research. But again, going back to what a few people said, is then about action. What happens next? How do we kind of challenge the status quo in these countries who state that they're doing all sorts of wonderful things for victims of human trafficking, but on the ground they're not?
Thank you very much. And I think time is pressing on, so I'm going to have to draw this panel discussion to a close. It's obvious that, sorry, but Imelda, you wanted to say something.
Yes, excuse me, Mary. I'm just very conscious that we have people online in countries where we do not have members. So it would be really, really useful. We've got Veronica's email, so I will contact Veronica and invite her to join Renata, because we do not have a member from Moldova. We have been to Moldova. We've met some of your NGOs, but we haven't actually got a membership there. So that would be really, really helpful to extend this work, because Moldova is very important because of the high level of trafficking from Moldova.
Could you put the Renata website into the chat line, just so that people can contact Renata if they want to explore further work? And also the website will have the report on it after this webinar.
Mary, sorry for interrupting you, but there is a problem for the panel, because we, in this particular webinar, the way it's set up, sadly, we're not able to chat to everybody. So if somebody out there from Renata could put into the chat the website for Renata. Has it already gone in?
It's gone in now, yes. Annie Bannister's put it in. So it's in the chat line. It's just appeared. And the website, so that's great. Yeah. So I'm going to say that this has been a really interesting and challenging and useful presentation, but also, like most research, opens up lots of possibilities for further research. I would like to thank all those people who've prepared this, who've organised it, who've worked on the tech side, and who've participated. I pity I can't see all your faces. It would be nice to be able to, but I know we want to take a photograph of everybody. So Brian, I'm hoping that that's possible. Is that right? Yeah. So if you don't want to be photographed, switch your camera off. now, but keep the sound on because we want to just finish off by to thank everybody for participating. In the meantime, there will be a follow-up survey to all those who participated so that we can make our presentations even better in the future. So at this point, I will hand over to Imelda to finally sum up and thank everybody.
Well, it's been a remarkable webinar, and thank you very much first to St. Mary's. And you really inspired me with your inputs, because you just showed how committed, not just for the information, but the commitment to this work against human trafficking as human beings who can feel the injustice. And I was really inspired, and thank you, DM2, for making your input so very clear in terms of recommendations, needs, good practice, and where we can go further with this. It was beautifully done. Probably the best input from a research person that I've heard in a webinar, so thank you. And also thank you to the 6 who spoke from the 6 countries. It was inspirational to really flit around Europe and to feel the problems and the issues that you are all facing in your grassroots work. And finally, Mary and the technical people and the panelists who answered the questions and you people that were picking up on the questions. What a team we have in Renata, and how could we function without it? Thanks to Anne Kelleher, who beavers away in the background doing the minutes and ensuring. And finally, I would like to thank Brian O'Toole, who actually kept the show on the road for us throughout. And really, you did a most remarkable job to keep us going, you know, even in difficult times. So thanks everybody, and let us go forward. Let us not see this as the finish. No way. It's a tiny beginning to tip into the iceberg, really, of terrible practice going on, which is not serving the victims and survivors of human trafficking. So let's continue the journey and feel passionate and inspirational in our work in this field. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, and
thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Everyone, bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.